Welcome to Taking Stock, Empower's new video series where we offer first thoughts on leading financial news. I'm Vanessa Welch, Vice President for Financial Insights, and I'm here with Empower's Chief Investment Strategist, Marta Norton. Marta, great to see you.
Good to be here, Vanessa.
Inflation taking center stage today as we dive into the CPI report ahead of next week's big Federal Reserve meeting. We did see inflation move in lockstep with expectations, with core inflation move modestly higher than expected. Marta, you just analyzed the numbers. What are your first thoughts?
Well, listen, with markets parsing every individual data point, trying to divine what the Fed is going to do in terms of the size of its cut next week, I think we can expect a core inflation that's running modestly higher than expectations to rattle markets a bit. But broadly speaking, as we look at this report, I think the moderation trend remains intact. So here are some of the highlights. If we're looking at food and energy, food prices climbed modestly by 0.1. Energy prices actually down. Goods have been deflationary over the course of 2024. That continued in this August report, though perhaps for some categories not to the same degree as the month prior. And then as we take a look at core inflation, and of course, this is where the trouble spot has been, services surprised to the upside, particularly with shelter. And this has been a really thorny issue for inflation for quite some time. Housing costs have remained higher than expected, especially as we look at these price indexes. The real-time declines that we're seeing in certain areas are just not passing through. So we do expect that housing will soften, but of course the timing is tricky. And while the moderation trend is intact, it may take some time for it to fall toward expectations.
Yeah, let's dive a bit deeper into that moderation trend. What do you think about the trend from here? And more broadly, Marta, how should investors manage for inflation?
Yeah, so zooming out and looking at this longer picture of inflation that we've been encountering, it's been a harder fight than a lot of economists initially recognized, particularly as it pertains to its persistence. Frankly, I agree with Powell's statement in Jackson Hole, where there is growing confidence that the inflation battle, if not behind us, is at least a battle that it appears to be winning for the moment. But I don't necessarily believe that inflation will fall on some preordained basis back to 2% in the immediate future. And so I think investors need to develop expectations that allow for blips on the radar or uncertain timing. And that can both help ensure that they don't overreact to any one print, as we might see today, and also help ensure they build more resilient portfolios that are made to weather a range of market environments.
Marta, I think the big question is, how do you think the Fed's going to react to these latest CPI figures? Are you expecting any changes in their strategy now?
Well, listen, I mentioned Jackson Hole and Powell's speech there. What he stated, it was growing confidence that inflation was back on a path to that 2% inflation target. And I think even with the blip in core inflation moving a little bit higher than expectations, this report is largely further evidence of that view rather than kind of altering the perspective. In that same address, Powell mentioned that a shift is coming. It was time to pivot policy. And that really reinforces the idea that a cut is coming in September. So, of course, the debate centering on the size of that cut, and I think a lot of people are going to be using this report to help divine that. For my own part, I'll offer my perspective in my new monthly commentary, Between the Margins, which is coming out on Monday.
And we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, the waiting game, Marta, continues ahead of the Fed's big meeting next week. Marta Norton, Chief Investment Strategist for Empower, thanks so much for your insights. And you can find Marta's commentary Between the Margins on Monday. And we'll be back next Wednesday on Taking Stock with Marta's reaction and analysis of the Fed's decision. Until then, thanks so much for watching Taking Stock. I'm Vanessa Welch. We'll see you next week.
Empower. What's next?